Welcome to Muckrakers, where we dig through the latest happenings around so-called AI. In each episode, we highlight recent events, contextualize the most important ones, and try to separate muck from meaning. I'm your host, Jacob Hames, and joining me is my co-host, Igor Kravchuk.
Thanks, Jacob. In this episode, we will talk about how actors of different degrees of importance, power, and sanity are planning to handle the potentially incoming age of AI, or if you insist, AGI.
Yeah, and before we start on that, we wanted to note just a couple things. There was apparently a New York Times not post, sorry. uh, there was a New York Times article that claimed AI outperforms doctors. We're not surprised at all that turns out that study was not very good and wrong. So, wanted to signpost that for all of you.
In other news, in a study done by Intel to show off their new NPU integrated AI goes brrr chips, they found that the productivity gain of the users that they tested things on was negative. Intel claims it's a skill issue and the users just need to get good at using the new AI tools. But let's see.
North Korean hackers incorporated AI to generate profiles, which were then used to scam a bunch of people on LinkedIn with malware and stealing crypto. So there's that.
And in other extremely unhappy AI news, Character.ai apparently had so bad moderation standards that they had literal pedophile AI chatbots set up to groom and normalize shitty behavior. No joke here, just completely disgusting.
Yeah. On the flip side, sometimes AI truly does bring us miracles. And this one is literal AI Jesus. Yep, that's right. There is a church in Switzerland that has an AI Jesus at their confessional booth. And that's just beautiful. You can't
The-
get better than that.
You can get better than that. You know what it says in the AI confessional when you talk to the AI?
What?
Don't share anything private or incriminating, which kind of defeats the point.
That's so good. That's so good. Okay, well, let's move on to the main thing we're talking about, which is handling A parentheses G I. The sort of hook that we wanted to get in here was um, a couple different news outlets are saying that, and common sense is saying that Trump is likely going to repeal many of the things Biden did, including the AI executive order. So, what does that mean? And why should we care? I guess about that. Um, and then we'll use that as a lens to also look at a bunch of other um, government initiatives to see what people are doing to prepare for this tech.
I mean, it's not only the news outlets that are saying that. Trump himself is also
Yeah,
saying that and has been saying it on the campaign trail. And,
and explicitly about the AI one as well. Like, yes, it's said about a bunch of things, but one of those things that has been discussed by Trump is repealing the Biden administration's AI executive order.
which comes with some high profile Republican backing, like the top brass, the best that the party has to offer, i.e., Ted Cruz, has been ringing alarm bells about the regulatory overreach of the Biden administration for a while. So I guess
Right.
Trump is just following Cruz's guideline here.
That's horrifying. But when we look at what actually is likely to happen, um, at least I'm seeing a slightly different picture. Like a lot of what Biden had put in the AI executive order and like the national security memorandum that's followed it up with basically like a continuation of it this year, um, is pretty much in line with Trump's original executive order about AI. There are a
Well,
couple things. Sorry.
yeah, I mean, except the stuff about protecting human rights and democracy, and like all of the things that even in the downplayed uh, and conditional elements that we praised him on. By the way, check out our episode where we talked in depth about the memorandum and how to interpret it. And I think he has just much less of that crisp and nice language in it.
Yeah, I would say that. So the big differences here between like Trump's original one and then Biden's executive order and the national security memorandum, um, are a couple things. First, one pattern is that Trump's put a lot of power and responsibility in the OMB, or Office of Management and Budget. And upon looking a little bit closer into this, that makes sense because it's the largest office that he would still have a direct line to that office and being able to control it.
Small nitpick. This is the largest office in the executive office of the President of the United States, the EOP, which is like the thing that is like the direct line where he doesn't have to deal with like all of the other like chains of command that have like congressional control and stuff like that. This is
Yeah,
like his office.
right. So giving that office a bunch of responsibility and basically most of the tasks in there makes sense if you want to make sure you can control it well, I guess. Um, it's probably too much for an agency like that, but or yeah, an office like that, not an agency. Um, but yeah.
I'm
Anyways,
looking at the Wikipedia article of the whole thing to just like make sure we're not spreading fake news. And there is, it does make sense because it's really meant to be like the driver of changes. So, quoting here, the office is referred to as a permanent government since many policy programs and the people who are charged with implementing them continue between presidential administrations. So, up until Project 2025, or whatever it's called, there's a lot of career staff in here that are like the continuity of the executive like control to make sure that like the attention of actually carrying out decisions stays up.
yes. However, the reason that I bring it up is because in Biden's plans, in Biden's executive order, and in Biden's national security memorandum, it's much more distributed across different agencies, offices, and the like. So even if we are saying, well, it makes sense that it goes there, it is a distinct difference between the two. Um,
It is also a
another,
lot more transparent. It is directly
yes,
telling you, I want this agency to do this. I want this agency to do this. So it's a lot more concrete and a lot more transparent.
yes. Um, Trustworthy AI is another thing that comes up in Biden's that does not show up in Trump's. Um, there may be trust in AI. I don't remember exactly if that's the case or not, but trustworthy, I don't believe, is a term that shows up in Trump's executive order on this, which, again, we noted and talked a little bit about that in our national security memorandum episode a couple back. Um, the last one that I see as a huge difference is that in the Biden administration's executive order, there is there are multiple mentions of intergovernmental collaboration. So, how do we work with our allies to further this cause? How do we support the world in using democratic, safe, trustworthy AI. That is not seen in the Trump version. So I think that's also a signal worth paying attention to. However, not sorry, there is one more thing that's also very distinct, which I think will probably be the focus uh, of Trump's at least public rhetoric, which is Trump did not have any reporting requirements, and Biden did. So there is currently like in process of being developed. Again, we talked about this in a previous episode, but reporting requirements for large training runs. I My guess is that these will be completely removed under Trump. So
Because they create transparency and actual accountability.
right, but the thing that will be said is that they stifle innovation.
Of course. Uh, However, the less we talk about the incoming Trump administration, the happier we will be. So let's look into the other branch of the US government, which still does some things, Congress. And there was an interesting report that made the rounds in some circles. It mentioned something that people have been whispering about in the AGI crowd for a while as well, and that is a Manhattan Project for AI.
I think that it's a strange. I think that it's a strange decision to call it a Manhattan Project for AI. I it almost feels like something that the people who are making large language model, like cutting edge large language models, like want, right? Because it sort of puts this AI, this idea of AI on a pedestal, of like it can kill us. It can be as bad as nuclear weapons. And I, I guess that's a signal that I think is worth mentioning. I don't have a fully baked opinion on that right now, but I do think it's worth calling out that like why is this the term that they've decided to go with?
I have a baked opinion on this, and part of this is just conjecture out of having followed this conversation.
Okay,
Um, so this idea of this Manhattan Project for AI has been like swirling around in conversations and forums for a while.
sure.
And there's also some more concrete and like saner versions that we'll get into later in the episode. But it is very much a thing that also people like me who have been like criticizing stuff have been calling out that like by talking about AI as if it is functional, shout out to the paper, The Fallacy of AI Functionality. Um, but by talking about it that way and acting as if it is as deadly as nuclear weapons, you are putting it on a pedestal and you are doing advertising for it.
Hmm.
And this idea of a Manhattan Project to go to specifically AGI, which was um, in the recommendations list of a committee of that had the job to investigate specifically US China economic and security issues,
Hmm.
and was flagged as particular importance, that they should initiate something like that. And I am of the opinion that this is only because this has been seeded for the last 5+ years by OpenAI, by Anthropic, by GovAI, by all of these AI hypers,
Hmm.
whose I want to emphasize here because it also bears calling out. Main contribution to the AI race has been to drive it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's. I guess maybe a more fun speculation is: do you think that the movie Oppenheimer and therefore Christopher Nolan also had an impact on this? Because I would say like probably it would
Yeah,
be it's like a smaller impact, but like that definitely brought the Manhattan Project like really into the public discourse, I think. So I would say that's like something that's a lot more fun to speculate about than the other stuff.
I would argue that like nerds and like people who fancy themselves elites always would have gotten like the same pedestaling and association. But I do agree that it's probably a thing where like now the public will also know what people are talking about because of the movie. Brought back into memory.
Yeah.
I want to be a bit more specific in what they mean with that though,
Yeah, yeah, that would be helpful.
because it's basically two concrete things. It's one thing, uh, broad multi-year contracting authority to the executive branch and funding for leading AI, cloud, and data center companies and others to advance the state policy at a pace and scale consistent with the goal of US AGI leadership. And the second one is direct the US Secretary of Defense to provide a Defense Priorities and Allocation System DX rating to items in the artificial intelligence ecosystem. Basically, like, make this a priority. And the same section also mentions stuff like genomic research, genetic data, biotech should be like a lot more controlled, and there should be a lot more like scrutiny towards Chinese contractors. They should consider legislation to restrict or ban importation controlled by Chinese entities that involve autonomous humanoid robots with dexterity, locomotion, and intelligence, energy infrastructure. Like a lot of this report is just overall like responses to deteriorating US China relations.
Yeah.
But I am not even thinking this is necessarily a super bad thing, like
Hmm.
for all of us. But it is a thing that we shouldn't be happy about.
Which part about it do you think we shouldn't be happy about?
So what I mean with that's not a bad thing is that like if we think like geopolitically and like in the gray world that we live in, like there's a reason why I'm in Switzerland and not the US, as I was optimizing for liberty and freedom, because I don't necessarily like the US system. That being said, I much prefer a US hegemon over a Russian or a Chinese hegemon. Might be because of like cultural affinity, but I do. I thought until this year that the US was relatively solid on not going full on authoritarian because of the national ethos being this liberty thing. And I still have hopes for that. And with that perspective, I don't think it's necessarily a smart thing for democracies to non strategically just share the gains of democracy with other parties that don't play the same game,
Mm.
basically.
Hmm.
So, like, all of this, like, freedom through trade didn't work. And I'm, I still want to have, like, open societies. I still would like to have, like, openness as much as possible. But for example, with, like, not just outsourcing all of your infrastructure to China, but making sure that, like, you have that in actual like allies that at least think in the same ideology than you is just like a rational move for a geopolitical actor. It doesn't it doesn't mean that I'm think it's like the best thing to go, but it's not like stupid. And the
Okay,
reason
wait,
why,
wait, wait. I think this is tied to that, but I wanna bring up the idea of the TikTok ban.
yes,
What do you think about that?
I think that is similar. I think we should just ban TikTok, period.
Well,
But
you think we should ban all social media, which like reasonable. I'm not
Not
saying that
bad, not banned, but massively restructured. A separate episode.
yeah,
Um,
we can talk more about that later. But um, like I mean, in a vacuum, without the like other context, like I don't know. I feel like it's definitely setting a different standard. Um, and to me, it sounds like you're saying maybe that's okay. Um,
yeah, I'm
and I
kind of
so I just
saying
wanted to
that.
make sure that that's clear. Because like I feel like that's a more in the public eye like discussion that uh people may be able to relate to.
But like it needs to be said, like this is not a like uh anti-Chinese as in the people argument. Like if you like harass, assault, become hostile against Chinese people, you suck.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a state to state and system to system relationship thing. And
Mm-hmm.
like that's why I said we shouldn't be happy about it. That like this might be the right response, but in the same way that uh like having a fight with a family member is sometimes the right thing to do,
But it's not
even though it sucks.
enjoyable, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But like
Um. Sorry. Go ahead.
I would much rather we could just openly share and we could just all do the kumbaya, let's talk about our differences and find like compromises to coexist on this planet thing. But like that not being the world we live in is, I think, a reality that if you want to be like a more open person, the difficulty is to like differentiate between when there is a self-fulfilling prophecy and you could like actually dare to be more open and invite people in good faith to also come to the negotiation table, and when you actually need to kind of also play that game because our person is no matter what you do.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's US, China, and this particular thing. Otherwise, this thing is not about AI basically. Like
Yeah.
people just jumped on this because it mentions their talking point.
I mean, it. To be fair, it does mention it as like basic, like it mentions it very pronounced in a very pronounced fashion, like which I think was sort of a marketing tool almost.
Yeah, you mean for the report or for
Yeah,
the idea?
the report, like it's
I'm not
it,
sure the report was marketed. Like I only found this because like the AI crowd shared it on like the Slacks, and like
yeah.
I found like a much more stupid plan for this.
So
Yeah.
I'm not saying like marketed intentionally, but I mean like I don't know. I feel like that was like the sexiest idea that was in this like economics report, and so they slapped it at the top.
Ah, you mean so like somebody would actually discuss it in the media, and then people would look at the rest of it as well?
Yeah.
Maybe like I feel like there's also other stuff in there that like is are good ideas that are not going to happen. So there's for example like chapter 4 7. They recommend to remove the de minimis exemption, like the thing that Wish and Alibaba and so on use to like get tariff exemption when sending small amounts to the US, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which like I think I don't like exemptions in law. I think like a law should just like apply to everything and make sense for everything, and not just like have these like arbitrary like thresholds
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
can
Like
game.
make a better law instead.
But I still like so like I think removing this is now a good idea because of it, but it's not gonna happen because this is gonna like actually affect the average American's lives, and it's gonna make like drop shipping much more difficult, and like so I feel for people who wrote this report, so and I would give them that like if this was like a cynical play to get eyeballs by slapping on like a hot topic, then like I give them that.
Sure. Does that
Mo-
cover it for the Manhattan for AI?
It does cover it for the US Manhattan for AI. Because would it surprise to hear that other countries that are not the US of A also exist and matter?
It does surprise me, actually, as someone who lives in the United States of America.
So
That's
the
it. That's
EU
full
also has
stop.
plans.
No, that can't be right.
Yes. As an American, what do you know about like the EU?
What, like everything or like about this?
Like, what is the main association that Americans have with the EU?
It's in Europe.
I was fishing for regulations.
Oh, no, I wouldn't have gotten there. I was going
Yeah.
much more surface level.
So the EU does things a bit differently than in the US. Like, first of all, we have less guns, but we also have less AI.
It's true.
So right now, the main uh, problem of the EU is that it's actually a federation of states, uh, and states' rights are actually a thing here. So you can just opt out of common funding projects
Mm,
or like veto them. So various actors in the European AI movement have been moving through the Alice and Claire networks of like AI labs to push like funding
mm,
towards AI.
okay.
And this message of like CERN for AI has been a thing for a while as well, but it's
So
getting more and more traction.
before we go further into that, uh, what's CERN?
CERN is the big super collider originally, or like the center for research in nuclear physics that has the big super collider. Uh,
Okay.
the LHC, you might have heard of that,
Let's
the Large
assume
Hadron
I
Collider.
haven't.
Um, I need to not get off track. I recommend a very good series of videos by Bobby Broccoli on YouTube,
That's a great
who
name.
who does very good like science history animation videos, and he has like a series about like the missing super collider in the US.
Okay,
And
cool.
the TLDR is that basically to find new elements and to study like high energy physics, you need to like smack stuff together at high speeds. And for that, you basically need to build like giant loops of magnets to spin ions and atoms in that loop until they reach like decent fraction of the speed of light, and then you crash them into each other.
Hmm.
And right now, actually, Europe has the biggest one, and in this field, size does matter. And they only got there through like incrementally collaborating on making slightly bigger ones, while the US was trying to make a single giant one, and they were going to build it in Texas, and then there was like political drama about defunding it and Senate speeches. Like, watch the Bobby Broccoli videos. It's really good. But so that's where CERN came from, and then it became kind of the center of international research because all of the different European countries pitched in to pay for this. The US pitched in for this, so they've been doing like just generic good physics in Geneva. Like it spans between France and Geneva, the collider, and this is like this model of a working international collaboration, also like the ISS, the International Space Station. Uh,
Well, not really working, but sure.
I mean, it got built. It has been doing science for ages, and like now it's no longer working. But like,
I mean, so to be clear, there are still experiments happening on the ISS,
yeah,
but it's going to be dropped as a thing in 2030, and there is no effort to make that not happen.
yeah. But that's a bit the difference between US-led collaborations and European-led collaborations.
That's fair. Yeah,
So like
we won't think about that until 2031.
the CERN is going strong. CERN is pushing physics and other things, and so it's this model for AI research in Europe, which comes with a challenge of just like you need to distribute the gains, and 108 billion are in the talks. Nothing is formalized, but like things are moving towards that, and neither the regulation nor the CERN for AI, like their Manhattan project, is really concerned about AGI.
Hmm.
Like, because Europe is playing catch up. And we can compare this a bit like with the US, which is the hegemon, right? Like the US has all of the AI lead already. They're thinking about racing forward to make sure that they stay there.
Hmm.
I think both the executive order and this congressional report talk about maintaining the lead.
Yeah.
And the EU needs to thread the needle between catching up. So they need to get money into this. But also the joke I was trying to make earlier with like we do like our regulations.
Mm.
And as uh, the Senate's stellar minds, for example, Ted Cruz, point out, regulation stifle innovation.
I
So you
really
need to
hate it
balance
when
that.
you say that he's the Senate stellar mind. It really irritates me because I know that's what some people think, and I just can't get over it.
Moving on from European countries to ex-European countries.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the old motherland before you had your tea party?
I mean, this is just AI SI initiative. Um, to me, based on like my understanding, is it's like the same as the Manhattan for AI, but it doesn't have um the big companies in the UK. So like there are a decent number of I say AI safety researchers like at Oxford and Cambridge and in those places. And so they have those individuals, but there are no frontier companies that are truly based in London. Like you could say that DeepMind is, but like not really. Like DeepMind isn't the frontier company; it's Google. So
I was waiting for it to finish for like the savage front against DeepMind.
I mean, let's be real. Um, so other than that, and also that like it has slightly more rules. So like they actually do have reporting requirements and like have followed through on saying that they have them, which is uh, a step above the US. I mean, it's still like, will the companies actually provide that? Who's to say? But they at least have it and are confirmed in that. So that's sort of their state. Did I miss anything there?
Um, a few small details that kind of matter. So like the
Okay.
UK has been like one of the entry points or infestation cradles of the EA thought in Europe. And they literally had like an self-described EA as their one of their ministers under Boris Johnson. Dominic Cumming, special advisor to the UK Prime Minister, self-identified as an EA and posted quotes from Eliezer Yudkowsky, amongst other people.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, so like the infiltration has gone on for much longer, and so that's why the UK was like the first national entity, I think, that broke the like not the taboo, like that actually started with like, okay, we need to actually figure out like AI safety and put like millions of dollars into it.
Okay.
So they founded this AI safety task force. They have this ARIA Institute. They're like giving lots of grants towards that.
Hmm.
And my read, it's like this, the self identity is a bit what you described. Like we are innovative, we are commerce, we are like liberal, so we don't like regulation because they stifle innovation. But also we are reasonable and not as crazy as those Yanks. So there's like a mixture of Europe and US going on. And they do have like a history of computing, right? Like not only so like DeepMind and I think about like ARM and just literally like the history of computing, like Turing and
Hmm.
all of that stuff. So there is also something like keeping your lead, even if you're kind of like no longer like the leader, you're like at least like punching above your weight, and a lot of your overall like potential economic future depends on staying strong in this field.
Hmm.
Um, but I think they have this uniquely British thing of like they're in denial. This is a hot take. This is just my vibe.
Okay, hot take warning.
I think the UK has a problem that they're in denial about what the actual role is, and they still think of themselves as a very important global empire
Mm,
and not a kind of shitty island next to a cooler island that they colonized a while ago. Um, and like they Germany has the same problem. Like Germany a while ago released a report that had them shocked that people come to Germany for free education and then they get a job in the US because German salary for tech workers is much less, even if you factor in like social service and stuff like that.
hmm
And the UK has the same thing. So I think they wanted to do the Manhattan Project, but the only thing that they could get are like the ones that are like good, but not necessarily like product oriented and more in
mm,
towards the AGI anxiety direction. And when those people are now to a much larger degree directing where the money flows because they don't have the others. Like all of the people who are like uh, unencumbered by that but still strong are in other places like the US, Canada, Switzerland, Singapore, China.
hmm
Like that would be like a hot take. Uh,
Interesting.
and I genuinely think I'm probably a bit wrong in it. There's definitely talented people there. Like people go there for good reasons and stuff like this. But um, I don't think you would lead with what they're leading if you had enough other strong people. Like example from Germany, again, hot take and reading between the lines, but Bernhard Schölkopf is like a solid like researcher in causal and theoretical AI, and he is basically the only reason why Amazon has a center in Tübingen.
hmm
And just after they had finished the construction of the Amazon research center that he was about to head in Tübingen, he quit Amazon and just stayed in academia, which like I read as personally a baller move to just make sure that Tübingen has like sunk cost fallacy of Amazon in there without him having to be there.
Yeah, that's actually pretty funny.
So like
uh,
like Turkop is like an OG, and I respect him a lot. And like the UK doesn't have enough of these to like carry them where they want to be, so they needed to find like other recruitment sources. Is my personal hot take.
hmm. Okay.
But they're still on the saner level of things. Like even the guy that they have leading the AGI factor, like David A. Dalrymple. I talked to him. I don't like the take that he has, but his plan to secure AGI scales down. Because it's basically just like formal verification and principled approaches to designing AI systems and to defining alignment and to like define rigorous processes in order to have a like civil debate. Like it's good. It's like the best of British culture in a sense, like very parliamentary, very let's get into a queue and orderly argue, like
Is
uh
wait, is that I see I always read it as Davidad. Is that
yeah,
not?
David A. Dalrymple is his
Right.
actual name. And then
Oh,
his
okay.
his online handle is Davidad.
Gotcha. Okay. He's got a
Uh
cool mustache.
he is the like one of the best masters. I think Giuseppe's mustache, like the Odyssean Institute's founder,
Oh yeah.
competes.
Yeah, his pretty good too.
But I will never be manly enough to have such a mustache. So
I hope I will one day, you know. I'm growing it. It's growing, but it's not there yet.
yes. But
Um
moving on from mustaches,
yeah.
Joshua Bengio has gone
hmm
on the AGI field trip as well,
hmm
and he has a proposal that is much more concerned about global distribution of gains. So his proposal came from a Journal of Democracy about multilateral network of uh, frontier labs. So
Okay.
it's basically multiple CERNs of AI, multiple blessed labs that are basically run by the UN,
Okay. Um,
which reasonable.
I mean, if you can make it happen, I guess that's the hard part, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And
but like technologically, like that's doable.
so like there's then the difference, and I think this is also like where the perspectives come in. If your plan is to actually make it safe, you don't need to build the AGI and then make it safe. You can also just do research without needing massive resources and having all of that stuff distributed, and rely on just normal high security stuff.
Yeah.
Like basically every country that has a nuclear program already has the like security protocols in place to keep their nuke stuff secret from other nation states.
Right. But my understanding is that, and I guess I could be wrong in this because like a lot of that's classified and stuff, but like my understanding was a lot like the way that a lot of that's done is it's purely analog. Um, and so like if you wanted to have a schema like this where there is sharing to any extent across like between national labs, there would need to be advances in the security of that process. So like not and like I'm not saying that's impossible. It's just like as it is right now, I feel like that probably wouldn't be um like immediately implementable.
So it's mainly not implementable because of political and like you need to figure out the governance structures of this.
Mm,
But tech-wise, like a signal group chat would with ephemeral messages would get you 99% the way for like the idea exchange. The main thing is like vetting people, having a trusted group of researchers, and building the governance structure that ensures the trust in this. That's I think the bigger challenge. The technical things are trivially solvable. That's always the thing. But like in all of these discussions, like, the tech is not the problem, and the like also doesn't say like the AGI is not on the horizon and does not need to be aligned or solved. It's mainly about figuring out like equity and governance process, and all of these things you can research also with pen and paper in theory.
right.
Um, so that's a we like I personally like the idea again, even if we don't think about AGI. Like if we get a multinational, multilateral lab complex doing high level research on stuff with additional funding from the AGI anxiety, I would be happy. It's a good
Sure.
outcome.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess me just making sure. Are you thinking this is like one single location?
So in the uh, conceptual framework, that is like I think a bit left open. I think realistically it would need to be like multiple separated labs that can check each other. The idea is also like to do like peer review, but not open. So it
Mm.
is like
So it would probably still require like physical access on some level.
yeah.
Okay. Got it. Because that's the thing that I was thinking would like need to have developments to be resolved. Um,
I'm not sure you can just have like one in Switzerland, one in the US,
and you just
one in
have like
China.
someone or a group of officials or whatever whose like job it is to be there and report on it.
Yeah, like how you do in the Oppenheimer town, and you do like a couple of those in different countries. That's the saner version that is also being shipped around. Like Bengio contributed to the UK initiative. The Davidat plan is related to that. So there's like the takes on AGI that is actually focusing on AGI and safety. That also crucially, and this is like one of the big difference going back to comparison, all of the US plans, including Anthropic and OpenAI, is basically let's build it and then we figure out how to align it as we go. Whereas all of the European-ish plans, but they're all let's make it safe and then build AGI. So like the order is subtly different, which is a difference that is worth highlighting. So these are the countries where like I actually know some stuff about, and I can kind of comment on things. But other countries also exist,
Again, I'm
and
shocked.
yes, I mean one of them you are aware of is like the other hegemon. China has regulation and they have a plan. They don't seem to talk much about AGI. There's DeepSeek, which is a Chinese hedge fund that has the mission to make AGI, but that's not the same thing. Um, but it boils down to authoritarian EU would be my kind of like chill and casual summary.
At
They're
least
doing
the
very,
stuff we can see, right? Like we don't
yeah,
know everything, but like the stuff that has been released is like more authoritarian version of so just like more rules, but still like make make it fast. Get
and
there sooner.
And when we say authoritarian, it's not an insult. It's just like the rules say stuff like you need to have like good party values and you need to be like harmonious in your society. It's like this. It's just a different framework of evaluation than like a liberal or these like self-pronounced liberal democracy would think of as like what you should put into laws.
Yeah, I think a good example of that, I don't it was like one of the original Chinese AI like frameworks. Basically, they said, hey, if you're going to make AI stuff, you need to follow these rules. And it was like in August of 2023, I believe. Um, but within it, they had much more strict content requirements. So like if your LLM can output things that are bad for the CCP, then we have the right to shut you down. Um, which like includes, to be fair, a lot of the things that um, people who are worried about these risks would also like. That includes not only saying Xi Jinping looks like uh, a little teddy bear, but also that like this is how you make a bomb, right? So like it's a double-edged sword. All we're saying is it's more strict in terms of content requirements.
Freedom of speech is very much not a concern compared to safety. It is like easy way of saying that.
Yeah.
Like the EU has some restraints on it, the US less. China just very much cares more about safety than freedom of speech. And if you try to like compare them again to we talked about earlier, they're also pumping massive amounts of money into it.
Mm-hmm.
There's like the specter of the Chinese like social credit score and other initiatives. But with the with the US sanctions on chips, with other issues that they're facing, like the emphasis is still on actual issues that you might face with current tech, and then keeping control and getting it done fast, as I said earlier.
Yeah. And that's, I think, also like fits the idea of like wanting to become less reliant on non state actors. Like I think that's another way to frame this, and I think that's something we'll see. Like I think progress will continue despite um, the increasing regulations from the Western world.
And it needs to be said that like anyone who's dreaming that China can't catch up is delusional. That
Mm,
like not only because they did like the trick that Germany and Switzerland did, where they just thought of IP as optional for a long time, but also like they just have a lot of people. They're very smart people. The whole culture is obsessed with education.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like the majority of my lab when I left was Chinese, and they're like super cool people. Like not everyone wants to go back, but like some will.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also working around the sanctions to some degree. They have their own semiconductors, and one of the early Chinese LMs, like in 2020, like was specifically optimized for their particular GPU availability, like the particular accelerators that were like all Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, if I was an AGI person, I would be scared of this. Since I'm not, it's more of a geopolitical question. Like the sanctions were again probably the right move that I'm sad about, like the Biden sanctions and the Chips Act and stuff like this. But it's not gonna slow them down much. Um,
Yeah.
that's China. One thing that was missing from all of these proposals that I explicitly want to like briefly mention, and we will definitely expand, is taxes. Because what shows up in some of these documents is distributing the gains. And some of them just do the good old trickle down. Like it will massively increase productivity, so there surely we will enter post scarcity because there's no way that we would ever do artificial scarcity. Others at least acknowledge that that's not going to happen and talk about a UBI. But at least from my read, I didn't see any mention of how to fund that UBI.
Yeah.
And
So, and just to be clear for everyone, UBI is Universal Basic Income. There are arguments for and against universal basic income, and we are not in this episode saying like one over the other, uh, uh, because we need to look into it more. Uh, just there are obviously like theoretical benefits of having some sort of universal basic income or like tiered basic income where below a certain threshold you get more up to that point. But then there are issues with like, okay, well, why wouldn't the companies just like raise prices to offset that? So like there are a bunch of issues it's worth going into in itself. And we're not saying anything about that, but you still need to fund it somehow.
we
And
have
the
a
way,
mechanism in societies how we fund things normally. In in the
yeah,
US, it's kind of a bad word, but the rest of the world just has taxes on things.
fun fact about the taxes thing in the US, in Colorado, if there's ever a proposition or something that we're voting on that raises taxes, the entire item in the ballot is written in all caps, which I think is just fantastic. It's like, oh, we know this one's raising taxes, probably isn't gonna pass every time.
Yeah. So everybody hates taxes. Some countries still do them, and uh, there are multiple papers that we're gonna link in the show notes that did the analysis because you could argue, oh, but if you tax robots and automation and AI to fund things either like in the UBI or the transition into another economy or just replace the lost income because you don't have income tax anymore because everyone is just like using AI for everything. Like you want those taxes, but they can also stifle innovation again. And these papers they find in almost all cases that they study, the tax is strictly a net benefit. That like the game theory works out in such a way that taxing the automation, if you don't overdo it too early, too much, you basically get the same levels of adoption, the same levels of productivity gain, and so on. Just that you get a better equilibrium because you have much less concentration of that wealth and you actually can still provide public goods that you
Yeah.
otherwise just couldn't provide. And all of the rest we will dig into another time, but stripping away the sci-fi and just talking about very basic things like how will we pay for our streets and military, and in non-US countries public healthcare and
Hey,
other
hey,
social programs.
hey. That's not very nice. It's already something that I'm self-conscious about.
Yes, but that is a thing you need to do, and this is a thing that you then should consider. Uh, Looking at muck, I think the only muck in all of this is probably in our hook.
Oh yeah, it's like it's not a rollback. It's I mean, reporting of large training runs is going to go away, but
You think it will go away?
I have a if I was to like I would honestly like bet you. Okay, I'm doing the analysis. 3-1 that it's going away.
I kind of agree with it, but then again, it's Trump, so who knows? Like,
Well, sure, but so then you should take that bet.
like honestly, like, okay, what would be my thing? Like the thing is, like I agree with you on like roughly 3-1, maybe even like more.
Yeah, I'm
But
actually
like,
being pretty cautious with 3-1.
like for me, it's not very much not like an actual like probability thing that I would bet on like this. It's like Trump knows. Trump has a plan or like an impulse he's gonna do. Not that he has it planned out,
Okay,
but
yeah, I
like,
was about to say like I don't think he does.
but like, I think there's like a Dirac on what's gonna happen. I just don't know where it is, and I have zero intuition for even how to start to do the analysis. So I don't feel comfortable gambling on, because I just I have no causal mechanism that I can hook my world model. And just like, I don't know.
So I
Like,
win is basically what you're saying.
it's maybe the only thing you win in this conversation about public
Hey,
policies in Texas.
yeah. Well, I gotta take what I can get.
And that's all that we can stand for this week. It ended up mainly me talking about uh, different policy elements and Jacob being depressed to be in America.
Yeah, kind of. I had some bits in there. Uh, but yeah. So that'll be it. And we'll see you next time.